us. Now, tonight we'll be looking into inside politics, whatever is happening in the political arena. And we are having Wakili Akiro, who is a lawyer, as I've stated in Swahili. Many thanks indeed, Wakili Akiro, for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Yes.
Now, looking into what is happening, let's start off with the heated debate that is ongoing right now. Deputy President William Ruto, security withdrawal. We have seen him, take it somewhat positively, or not really perturbed by the decision by the Ministry of Interior. But from where you sit, given that Deputy President is part of the presidency, is this move quite detrimental?
Well, I think what we all agree on is that Kenya is a rule of law nation. It's a country that is pegged on constitutionality, and we need to respect that aspect. Mm-hmm. And so the deputy president was elected, as was ratified or approved by the Supreme Court. As was approved after the second election of October 2017, mm-hmm. and we all know that he is the validly recognized Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. Mm-hmm. We have different acts of parliament. We have different pieces of legislation that enshrines the fact that the Deputy President's security is in law. It is not something that somebody is doing a favor unto the Deputy President. Mm-hmm. And so by the President or anybody who ordered the withdrawal of the special unit that have been given the mandate through the police standing orders, through presidential escort unit regulations, mm-hmm. to protect the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, mm-hmm. that order was really a detriment to the progression mm-hmm. of law in this country. Right. And as I think, according to my view, mm-hmm. is that it was a very wrong move, mm-hmm. setting a very bad precedence. Mm-hmm. Remember, you might fight the person of the deputy president, but then the office stays on. It will haunt the next or the oncoming office bearers.
All right. Now, when we look into the executive wars, what is happening right now, the fight between President Uhuru Kenyatta and Deputy President William Ruto, some political pundits have said that it causes issues of disunity and a threat to the national security here in the country. From where you sit, do you think this duo having this particular fight for the next 1 year might really affect the nation and the fabric of unity here in the country?
Number one thing that we must agree on is that it is really not going to be for an express 1 year. Mm-hmm. Because after a period of around 6 months from mm-hmm. now, campaigns will be officially opened. Yeah. And people will be able to bolt out and form coalitions as they think and realign themselves. Mm-hmm. But their bad blood, so to say, has stood the test of time. Yeah. They have been in what most people prefer to term as tantrums mm-hmm. for about 3 years now, mm-hmm. since the inauguration of the handshake mm-hmm. until today. Mm-hmm. We've been treated to the president says what about his deputy, the deputy has answered what about the president, and life has been continuing this way. Yeah. Although to give a good picture to the country, I think that just for the sake of unity in this country, mm-hmm. the two really need to come together and set a good precedence to the citizens. Be a good example.
Yeah, but all this started when we had the handshake and Martha's BBI. That is when these two leaders had this sort of bad blood between them. Now, the BBI at the moment, the Attorney General, Kihara Kariuki, as well as the BBI Secretariat, led by the two co-chairs, Janet Mohammed and former Dagoretti Member of Parliament, have initiated a process of going to the Supreme Court. Now, when you see this particular zeal to continue this particular process, do you think it is a waste of time?
From where I sit, according to my opinion, it is the most brilliant idea that has ever reached me, because there were questions that were left from the High Court's decision, which weren't clear from the 5-judge bench. We moved to the Court of Appeal. There were still a few pointers that the judges highlighted, which needed a higher ladder, a higher or apex point in the ladder of the justice system to get clarity on. For instance, I remember the judges talked about the need or the necessity for referendum legislation. That was particularly Judge Kiage. He pointed out the issue of referendum legislation. We also had other things that we could really question the Supreme Court to come clean or clear on. For example, when does the person of the president switches from being the president into being a Wanjiku and vice versa? Because they were saying that him being the president, he cannot initiate an amendment by way of popular initiative. At the same time, the court pronounced itself by saying that the president can be sued on his personal capacity as Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta. So you see, this brings the question. At the time when he is a Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, I think at that point he is able to initiate an amendment by way of popular initiative. So does the president, from the time he picks up the mantle of being the president of the Republic of Kenya, becomes expressly the president, or does he at some given point become a Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, as the court was putting it? And if that is possible, then I think that at whatever point he feels like he wants to be a Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, then he can be a Wanjiku and initiate an amendment by way of popular initiative. But then the question I would also pose to the Kenyans or the viewers is that, what do you think of the president when he retires to his home? You find him maybe relaxing with the family. He has not yet retired as a former president. He's still the president of the country. But then he retires, he goes to get some breeze at his home. What will be the headline of your news? You met Uhuru Kenyatta or the president of the Republic of Kenya? You see, these are the questions that we really need to we need to be clear on. And that is why I celebrate the BBI going to the Supreme Court, just for jurisprudential clarity, not necessarily on the referendum or what people are opposing or supporting, but for jurisprudential clarity, because the judgments have really invoked certain pieces of law that we really need to be clear on.
All right.
Yes.
Now, talking about seeking clarity and finding a way of answering some of the questions that were raised after the ruling of the Court of Appeal, the Junet Mohammed, who is a co-chair of the BBI Secretariat, pointed out that one of the key reasons why they're moving to the Supreme Court is to find a way of answering the two-third gender rule. They feel like some of the key ruling that the Court of Appeal made injured some of the solutions that were meant to be created here in the country. Now, when you look into the issue of two-third gender rule, if the 13th Parliament sets in without focusing on this particular matter, we might have any Kenyan going to court calling for the dissolution of that particular Parliament. How do we solve this equation and get to the polls?
Yeah, I think, like I said before, that really justifies the reason as to why the BBI appeal really needs to move to the Supreme Court for Kenyans to be clear on certain legal issues. But again, when you come to the issue of the two-third gender rule, we are cognizant of the fact that Kenya is situated within the continent Africa, which is really retrogressive per se in terms of women. I mean, the way they view women in the society. They are viewed as persons who really just need to be at home, take care of children, and maybe give birth and for continuity of family. But again, in the progressive society, we see women taking active role in the developmental agenda of the society. And so the approach that most of the legislators are coming up with, or whatever that we came up with as Kenyans to ensure that we have this two-third gender rule, was on the affirmative actions. But this really is not a long-term cure for the issue of the two-third gender rule. Why? Because today we confront women in parliament, reserve seats for them, at the same time also facilitate them or empower them to run for elective positions. They get elected, their reserved positions are also there. At the end of it, at some given point in time, you will realize that women will be more than men. And so what next? Do we now begin to reserve positions for men and begin to empower men also now to run for elective positions? We need to strike a balance so that we may be able to see a long-term solution to the two-third gender rule, rather than what a colleague of mine would always term in the office as we are just being given. I know she's a lady, she says that we are just being given these positions. I mean, we have not fought for. So I think that two-third gender rule being envisioned in the BBI was one of the goodies that the BBI was bringing to us, but it was, of course, tied with this other bedeviling marks that made it to flop. The issues of constituency, the issues of expansion of the executive that literally made the BBI to flop. Minus those other issues, the BBI was actually a good package for the country. So without the BBI, I think that the solutions that were inside the BBI could still be put in our legislation, in fulfillment of the terms of the Constitution, especially Article 27, which requires that the government will make sure that there are legislative mechanisms to enhance the two-third gender rule. So we can really bring that idea, which is very plausible. We put it into a legislation, and we find a way of coming up with the two-third gender rule.
All right. Now, it is really a sticky issue. We await to see how it will be resolved finally. Now, this particular petition has raised jitters that it might be a ploy to delay the 2022 general elections. Do you see it from that particular angle?
Not really, because the Constitution is very clear on election dates. And the Constitution is also very clear on what amount of time should a referendum be given preceding the general elections. We talk about 12 months here. So not unless that particular article or clause of the Constitution is amended, which also needs a referendum to do so, then we are very much clear that only impunity can extend the terms of office or the general elections in this country. But following the law as it should be followed, then the Supreme Court decision, rather appeal, will only serve to guide the government that comes in after the next general election. It is really not going to delay the general election. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Now let's shift focus from matters BBI and look to matters politics. Kenyans politicians are warming up for the 2022 general election, and I'm sure you've seen ODM leader Raila Odinga wooing the Mount Kenya region, and the area has been perceived of having a Raila phobia. They have not voted for Raila, I think, since 2002, almost 3 terms of governance. They have not really argued well with opposition leader Raila Odinga. What will be the special tactic that Odinga will use to sort of woo this particular community, which is a rich basket vote region?
Mr. Odinga, if I can really delve into his political life a little bit, is a man that some people term as an enigma in terms of politics. You really do not want to know what tactic is really going to use to woo these particular people. But we all agree the fact that although it is not true that Mount Kenya hasn't voted for Raila Odinga, we have been seeing on our screens that few votes have been coming from Mount Kenya, maybe 3 at times. You talk about 10. But then the big issue here was the gateway. The spokespersons from Mount Kenya have always been standing on the route to the mountain for Mr. Odinga. There are few perceptions that have been thrown to the electorates from the mountain. And now that he seems to be in good terms with these personalities who stand at the gate, and they seem to have given him a way inside the mountain, I think he will always find a way of talking to these people. And we saw it recently when he went to Moranga. So somebody was analyzing and saying that without the elected members accompanying him, the people came out en masse. And I think that is following the precedence that was set in Kisumu, when the president was stopped and the deputy president also, we saw masses greeting him. And then fast forward, we moved to Nakuru. We saw Kenyans really mingling with the opposition leader without any much ado. And it was actually wise for Mount Kenya also just to follow suit. And I think that is now the best way to go. Whether or not you're going to vote for a candidate, you are not supposed to throw stones. You are not supposed to go on streets and burn tires and even derail the economic growth of our country. But just make sure that you reserve your civic right to vote. You are not compelled to vote for somebody, but you can give them, accommodate them to hear what they have in their manifesto.
All right. Now, this Mount Kenya region, this time, politicians are focusing their attention to it, because all along they have voted in one block. But in this particular case, we have seen Deputy President William Ruto have a stake here and there. You have seen the political seats that UDA party has won, courtesy of by-elections that have been held in different parts of the Mount Kenya region. So are we seeing a situation where we might see a split, Ruto having half of the region, Raila Odinga having half of the region. Therefore, the region will break the tie of always voting in one block.
Yeah, it is a possibility, though it's really not feasible, because it is going to take a long time for Mount Kenya to really come to terms with Mr. Raila Odinga in full, because even as we speak right now, although he's visiting the region, there are still a few perceptions, because it is a mentality. It is an issue of mentality that needs to be really cleaned up, so that Kenyans can view their leaders as their leaders, regardless of their regions. And so I'm not sure if they are going to split it half-half, or one is going to have a bigger share, and the other is going to have the remaining share. Of course, we know there are also others who are upcoming. People like Moses Kuria, Martha Karua, and Mwangi Kiunjuri, you see they are forming a coalition. We have William Ruto's side. We have the JB Muturi, that is the speaker, also is really coming up. Recently, we've also seen Jimmy Wanjigi coming up. And so really 50-50 is not really not feasible. It's really not feasible.
At this time.
But I think this time Mr. Odinga can garner a few more votes than the previous years.
Yeah, they say that he only needs 20% to win in the general election now from Mount Kenya region. Now, let's focus on Deputy President William Ruto. We have seen that they are trying to woo ANC leader Musalia Mudavadi to join their camp. Now, a ticket of Ruto Mudavadi, is it strong enough to topple Odinga, given that already Odinga has a stake of the Western region votes, and maybe Mudavadi even to find loyalty in Vihiga County alone might be a task, so to speak?
That is true as you put it, because it is not really foreseeable that Mudavadi will settle for a lesser position in that coalition agreement with Mr. Ruto. Mudavadi going for a deputizing William Ruto will really act detrimentally to Mr. William Ruto's Mount Kenya votes.
Yeah.
Because I think Mount Kenya are also eyeing their
stake in
their stake in Ruto's government. And so if Mudavadi comes in and takes that particular position, then Ruto might lose a few of the votes from Mount Kenya. At the same time, Mudavadi will not really be able to pull much from his backyard, that is Western, given that Mr. Odinga has always spoken directly to these people. They have voted him year in, year out. Even when Mudavadi stands as the president, Mr. Odinga still garners more than him. So Mudavadi coming to Ruto is really going to act really negatively on both sides.
All right.
Yes.
Now, finally, in 2 minutes, there's an imminent cabinet reshuffle. I'm sure you've heard some of the rumors going around that President Uhuru Kenyatta is going to toe the line in terms of cabinet secretaries who are not really keen on following his agenda. Is it a little bit too late to have a shake-up in the government, a near where he's trying to salvage and find a legacy for himself, given that BBI itself has refused to give?
In terms of periods or times, the law is really not clear. It's not clear on the times when the president can reshuffle and not reshuffle his cabinet. Is really given a discretionary way to do it as he pleases at whatever time he feels like. But then in terms of legacy, the time we have is very little to really patch up whatever cracks or crevices that are already within his legacy. But we're yet to see the oncoming cabinet reshuffle, if at all eventually it materializes. I think whatever they have been preaching on inclusivity needs to feature in this oncoming cabinet reshuffle. But we shall also tend to think that this country as a whole, the country called Kenya, we are diverse and we come from different regions. And our people, we have really elected for ourselves what we call kingpins. And we best listen to our kingpins. So if we find these people coming together and forming government, I think that really is going to work towards the unity of this country.
All right.
Yeah.
Many thanks indeed, Wakili Akiro, for making time, giving us your perspective on what is happening here in the country in matters politics and governance.
Thank you so much. I'll be glad to always come. Indeed, it has been a pleasure meeting you and having to. Yes. All
right. Thank you so much. All right. That has been Wakili Akiro, who is a lawyer here in the country, of course, telling us what are some of the measures that the government should put in place, as well as politicians, in terms of the race to State House. We are taking a short break. We'll be back with much more on what is happening in the country and beyond our borders. See you on the other side of this break.
kina baba kina mama twende